Welcome to the Growth Through Grief podcast, where we interview individuals like you who are on their journey from loss to growth, along with mental health experts and growth guides, all with the purpose of helping you heal better, improve mind, body, and spirit, and find your new purpose from the loss and tragedy that you've experienced. Hi, I'm Tom Pacello, your host. I'm a growth evangelist as well as a fellow widower, having lost my beautiful bride of 19 years, Judy, when she was only 50 years old. My guest today, our first guest, is Chris Ice. And Chris, he lost his wife, Mary Kay, when she was young as well, only 54 years old. And he said goodbye to his bride of 32 years, mother of their 7 children, after a 5-year battle with breast cancer. During the disease and the fight and the aftermath, Chris served as the CEO and president of Ave Maria University, and he was also, before that, CEO of Catholic Charities of Kansas City, St. Joseph. All of this while the disease fight and aftermath, handling family duties, trying to hold it all together. This podcast, we got Chris as our first guest, is going to explore the story of Mary and Chris, first and foremost, challenges Chris faced in maintaining leadership roles while also caring for his wife and family. And it's basically a story of how to dig deep to find and leverage leadership amid tragedy and loss. Chris Ice, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Yes.
I always love origin stories, and I really want to know, how did you and Mary Kay meet?
We met in college. Actually, the first day she arrived at college, I was a junior, she was a freshman. And I had my antennas up for the new incoming freshman. And and actually, I was coming out of the gymnasium, and her mother was the one that introduced us. She was from Nebraska. I had a Nebraska shirt on. And she made the comment, "Hey, there's somebody from Nebraska." And we were in Kansas at the time. So that's how we met. And from there, fast forward 4 more years, and we were married and married happily for 32 years. So
I love that. I love how fortuitous in hearing origin stories things are, that you chose to wear that Nebraska shirt that day. And also how delicate it is, right? What if you didn't wear that Nebraska shirt and mom didn't notice you right out of the crowd? Although
I still may have been able to find her.
Yeah, you stand 6'3", so right. I think that's how tall you are.
Right.
So you're noticeable regardless.
That's right. We were both athletes in college. We were working out in the same gymnasium frequently as well. So.
Yeah. So as you said, a few years later, only 4 years, right? You got married. So right after she graduated college.
That's correct.
And you spent the next several decades just building a great relationship and a large family. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I was initially started as an assistant college baseball coach, and then I was recruited into the commercial insurance world, to where I had a long career with that, about 23 years, moving up through the executive ranks. And but again, having 7 children, it was also a challenge, because as you move up, the travel becomes more daunting and required, if you will. And so she was very willing to help. She was a stay-at-home mom, took care of the kids. So that served what I needed from the respect of my career. Mm-hmm. And we worked well together in that respect. So after many years of those insurance, great years and making a lot of money, I made a decision to really just start spending more time with the family. And so I stepped back. I took a job with a university out of Ohio and helped them build a fundraising division, which led to me becoming the CEO of Catholic Charities and eventually the president of Ave Maria University. But through all of that, you have your ups and downs, your challenges, but it was a great partnership in that respect. We each kind of served our own roles, but as you mentioned earlier, she had cancer. When that hit, that changed a lot of dynamics. I think it was, as you said, fortuitous early in our life. It was fortuitous also at the time where I had already stepped down from my executive career when the cancer came, because I was ready and prepared to be able to take care of her in a greater way.
Yeah. And Chris, I had not, right? I was still running my company, responsible for 20 some odd families, besides my own, as founder and CEO of the company.
Right.
I was on the road all the time, and it made it really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So good that you were able to be there and be home for it. Tell us a little bit about when Mary Kay first got diagnosed, and I think she had breast cancer, correct? What was that like?
That's correct.
Tell us when you got the initial diagnosis.
Well, it was the initial diagnosis was a shock, because she was not someone who should have ever had cancer to begin with. She had no family history of cancer. Her mother, her sister, nowhere that we could find. She was under 50, so those were markers. She never took a contraceptive. She never had an abortion. She never, all these things that lead typically to breast cancer, or could. She had none of the signs or markers. She exercised every day. Mm-hmm. She ate healthy. She was not overweight. It was one of those, it's like, why her?
Yeah.
Why, or she said, why me? She questioned God on that a lot of times. And so, it was not ours to question at the time. It was for me to help her navigate the huge medical, all the stuff that comes out of a cancer patient when it's brand new. And I had a great employer that allowed me to really step in and to make the time that I needed to help her focus and to find the right care and the right doctors and to navigate that whole system. But initially we had, she went through everything. She had 16 rounds of chemo. This is 2015. She had she had radiation. She had surgery, the whole works, and we thought we were in the clear at the middle of 2016, and lived cancer free for a couple more years before it came back. But that was the initial cancer diagnosis, a shock, because it was not something that we thought that she would ever have in that respect. So.
Yeah, I remember that when Judy got it, she did have a family history. So it wasn't completely unexpected. Unfortunately, her mom has had it, aunts have had it. So, but you mentioned how the medical system all of a sudden throws so much at you, and it really is overwhelming. They try their darndest to try to make sure that you understand what's going on and everything. And I remember reading the book Emperor of All Maladies to try to get up to speed and just start to consume all kinds of care books, because I don't know if you're like me. I think you are, where it's like, as the man, you're the solver, right? You immediately go into business mode almost, right? And it's like, okay, here's a problem. How are we going to solve this? How are we going to get you the best care, the best this, the best that? Yeah. And
I think that's that's important for a person going through a serious illness like that, to have someone to help navigate everything. And that you got to have a role in that respect, and that was what it was for me. And it, it was overwhelming to her. She couldn't. All she could hear was the C word. That was it. I mean, nothing else. She couldn't function. Hearing everything, and chemo was. She never put anything unnatural in her body. Her whole married life, married life, I never saw it. And to think that, that she was going to put chemotherapy. And she at first vowed never to do it, but then she said, I don't have an option. Yeah. And we looked at different things, but it was just, it was every chemotherapy was a major, I don't know what you call it. We had to go through mental health counseling.
Trauma. I mean, it's trauma. Yeah. You're poisoning your body. I remember the chemo that we got for Judy. One was a derivative of mustard gas, and the other was a tree bark poison, essentially, that the Native Americans in the Seattle kind of Pacific Northwest used to kill wild game. And that's basically it. And then radiation, that's another poison. So they're all...
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember they called her first 4 treatments the Red Devil. That's how bad it was. It was nasty. And you can imagine it just turned everything red. It was bad. And made her, so enough.
And it's a long, it was a long battle. And unfortunately, just like my beautiful Judy, Mary Kay did lose that battle, unfortunately. Tell us about her passing. Tell us about those last couple of days and last couple of hours.
Yeah, it was really kind of unexpected. The cancer came back in April of 19, and they said it was a different type of cancer. That's to be speculated a little bit, but you're not questioning. You just got to go back into that triage mode at that point. So she went through chemo again, came out of that, and then in December of 19, or late November, we discovered that it had metastasized into the brain. They had shed a brain tumor. And actually, at that time, they said it did not. They'd said it was separate, but I question that today.
Yeah. Ours, we got that separate diagnosis as well, that it was actually a separate type of cancer. It was not breast cancer.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we ended up, they removed the tumor out of her brain. It's about the size of a golf ball. And I had accepted the position as university president at the time, and they assured me and everyone else that everything was good. And so, we could move forward with the plans to do that, and she was going to be fine. Well, 2 weeks after we moved to Florida, from Kansas City, she wasn't feeling well, so we put her in the hospital, and we found, after a lot of tests, they found that she had microscopic cancer cells within her spinal fluid and brain fluid. And once we discovered that, she passed away within 2 days. So it was quite a quick discovery and shock. You look back and go, "What shouldn't have been?" But it was. I had no real idea. We thought she was going to maybe get through this, or at least have chemo and have some time, 3 to 6 months, and it didn't happen. So. And
that literally, Chris, was 2 weeks after you all had relocated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. She never unpacked a box in the house when we moved.
I'm so sorry. How many were all the kids living at home, or had some already gone off to school?
I had 4 at home still.
Okay.
And two my 4 youngest, and so that was it had a lot of help initially, but eventually my 2 older sons, one went to college, the other one, I encouraged him. He was in his early 20s. I said, you really don't think you have to be a caregiver here. You have to get on with your own life, and Dad has to figure it out. And so I think a little bit reluctantly he did it, but it was best for him. And because he loved taking care of his younger siblings and some of that. But maybe so then I was left with the 2 girls, and trying to run a university and manage the home. Even though I had a lot of support from the local community, it was difficult at best. And when I saw the continued decline of my girls in respect of the trauma, I said, something's got to happen here. And again, I found an opportunity in a window to step away from the university, and did so in July of 21. So
now, probably a lot like me, after the passing, I had to get back to work. The company was failing.
Yeah.
There were those 20 families relying on me. My girls were still relying on me. Talk about your kind of dive back into that, because I think when we have spoken prior, you talked about how you really did, almost as an escape, kind of dive back into work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I really did. It was, if you recall in 2020, what was going on in the spring, it was called a global pandemic. And there was a lot of pressure to, make decisions immediately on what you're going to do. And everything was coming at you daily. It was changing. And we had to decide, I stepped off the airplane from burying my wife in Nebraska, and they were already asking me, they being the board, we got to have a decision. Are you going to have the campus open in the fall or not? Are we, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be on a 6-week bereavement leave. And so I made the decision then on faith to keep the campus open. And, and I said, we're going to do it in person. And if we need to do some virtually for whatever purposes we can, a ill professor, or immune compromised student, whatever they may be. And but yeah, so all those decisions were coming, and then we had lots of other things that just didn't stop. And even though I was trying to have bereavement, I didn't have time to really grieve the way I probably needed to. But again, what do you do? I mean, it takes time. Grieving doesn't just last. You can't put a time frame on it. Some people can make it 6 months. Some people can make it maybe a month. I don't know. Others take years to recover, and it's all okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a lot of expectations sometimes on us with timelines. Well, it's 6 months. You should be done grieving. It's a year. You should be out dating again. I mean, there's all of these kind of expectations from the community and expectations from friends and family, and everyone's different. There are people I know who did get a lot of the grieving out of the way during the illness, and they're able to move on perhaps a little bit quicker in certain ways. There are others, and Chris, I'm a lot like you, where I threw myself into my work, and I really don't think I addressed the grieving process at all. So, 4.5, 5 years later, you'll pass me in a coffee shop and I'll be writing or doing something, and, the tears are coming down, and, I feel like I'm right back there in the battle or right back into whatever the sadness is. And so I'm proof point that there is no timeline. 5 years later, some things still feel so raw and so unaddressed in a lot of ways.
That's a normal behavior, a normal emotion. So
yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things I think that, as I got to learn your story and see some interviews that you've done, your spirituality. And that's something that I did not have. I had it when I was young, kind of lost it as an adult, and didn't really get back until, in a passionate way, until maybe 6-8 months ago. And so throughout the whole disease process and battle and passing, it just wasn't a part of my life. It wasn't something I could rely upon. And I looked at your story and said, wow, what almost a superpower that you had to be able to leverage that spirituality and the comfort that God. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, God is a superpower. I will say that. He's our creator. So I am nothing without him. And, but yeah, that was the guiding light for me, was my faith. My faith in Christ, faith in God, that there was something better there, that what happened with my wife, was meant to be for her life. We are all destined. We're all destined for heaven or hell. I firmly believe that. And so, the goal should be heaven. And so if that's the goal, and that's where we're going to live in eternity, our life is but a speck of dust in eternity. And so I've always tried to focus on that. My goal is to get all my kids to heaven. And my wife went there much quicker than what I would have desired here on earth. And once it happened, it's like you said, I relied back on my faith and my prayer life to say, okay, God, this is your will. I don't like it. No one likes suffering. But in that suffering, I hope to grow in a way that I can be greater for him or greater for others. And ultimately that those others, sometimes we look to, could it be for Tom? I look to my own family. I say, am I doing more for the university or more for my own family? If I say, it's my faith, my family, and my work in that order, then I was skipping a beat with my family, and that's where I needed to step back and say, okay, I got the faith is in order. I haven't lost that. I never did. It's not easy, but I didn't lose that. And then I said, if I truly am going to need to take care of my two daughters who are young, they were 12 and 14 at the time of my wife's passing. I'm sorry, 11 and 14. And, it's a matter of, okay, it's time to step back and help. And ultimately my other children too. I shouldn't just exclude them because they were older. They needed it too. In fact, my son, who's now 19, one of them, he made a comment to me the other day, 2 years later. He said, Dad, sometimes, since I haven't been home, it only feels like she's been gone about 5 months.
Yeah.
And so he's in a different grieving stage of his process, where when he comes home, has to reprocess things, that maybe the girls aren't processing, or me either. So we moved on from something, he may look at a picture and go, "Oh my," So that's a different,
and bring it all back again.
But that's where my faith played in. I just kept praying. I never stopped, and that's what. I don't know where I'd be without my faith. It's the guiding light in the midst of the chaos that's going on.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, envious in a way that you found you had that guiding light and you found it, because I really did feel, I threw myself into my work. I always had that identity as men. A lot of us put a lot into our work identity, our work personas.
Right.
But I did not have that overall guiding light, and I felt lost in a lot of ways. And so awesome that you had that. Now, I know you had said, one of the big things that your mission, your purpose is to make sure that you get to heaven, but that all of your children get to heaven. How do you work on that? How have you worked on that through a period where many of them, and I know my daughters have to be in this boat too, where they had a question, why my mom was amazing. She helped so many people. She had other cancer victims that she would take care of. Why her? And they've got to be questioning their faith a lot of times too. So how do you make sure that they are going to be on that good path, or at least set up for that good path to be with you in heaven?
Well, I think God helped me a little bit in preparation. There was a book many years ago, probably 20, 25 years ago, written by Dr. James Dobson. It's called When God Doesn't Make Sense. And it's about, you have all these tragedies in the world, and why is God allowing this, or why did he just step in, but life is a lot about decisions and choices that we make. And so God allows us complete freedom. He loves us so much. He gives us that freedom to make choices, even if it is walking away or turning away from him. And so what I do is I try to relate to my kids as best I can, my earthly fatherly role to them as God would be to each of them. Not nowhere near perfect by that means, but when I make those decisions, when my kid gets into trouble, I can give them advice, but I can't force them to make decisions that I like. So you have to give them that freedom to make those decisions, and then they have to suffer the consequences for those choices, whether good or bad. Yeah. And so I've watched some of my children suffer in that respect, and then I relate myself to God, the Father, and go, wow, he allows us to do the same darn stuff.
Yeah. I love referring to him as Father, because I think now that my daughters are almost raised, the lessons are there. Like you said, he lets us fail. He lets us go awry sometimes so we can learn the lesson.
Yeah, and so I think as our kids, hopefully we've given them a foundation when they were younger of maybe a prayer life or relying on God, maybe it's scripture. It doesn't matter what faith, necessarily. It could be Jewish or, I don't know a lot about the Muslim faith, but same type of thing. So I think all of that, especially in Christianity, you give them that foundation, and then I just have to pray for them that if they stray, that they'll come back. And I will say that some of my children have, and they have come back. And then, and maybe sometimes within a tragedy, people will change their life. And so if with my wife's passing, could that be a catalyst for them to come back to their Christian roots and their faith, to be able to say, to get closer to heaven? I don't know. Yeah. Again, my kids have made that choice. It's not easy. Praise God, they're all still, practicing their Christian faith. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. But again, it's a constant reminder. And as I remind my girls, I don't stop talking about Mom. I talk about her all the time, and try to recall the great memories, and we laugh, and we, because I think sometimes if we don't talk about it, they're still thinking about it, no matter what we talk about at the time. And then I relate to, let's pray. Can we pray for your day? Your mom's close to you. The veil between heaven and earth is thin. We firmly, that's our walk in faith, is that, the soul and the body are one while on earth. And when the soul, the spirit leaves the body, it's still alive. It never stops. So. Yeah.
Now, Chris, as you were talking, making sure that you're talking about Mary still, making sure she's a part of particularly special events. I know one of the mistakes that I made was not talking about it, not almost acting as if, she just happens to not be here, but not mentioning that she's not here during a special event or holiday or a Thanksgiving. In particular, one Thanksgiving comes to mind. Talk about that a little bit and how you try to get through, just every day or special holidays, special occasions by kind of making them a part of it still.
Yeah. Yeah, we do talk and have memories, try to, the good memories of her on those particular holidays. Because again, whether we, like it or not, I say like it or not, it's part of my kids. It's who they are.
Yeah.
Her mom was a big part of their life. She homeschooled all of them to a certain point,
wow.
so she's a big part. So we celebrate her birthday. And what I've done on her birthday the last 2 years is we fix her favorite meal, for the family, and then serve a dessert that she would never eat because she didn't like sugar, but we do it in jest to have fun and to laugh. Mom would never eat these brownies, but we're going to serve them anyway.
I love it.
Because we all want cake on her birthday. And then, particularly difficult, or maybe a little more difficult is Mother's Day, especially, because everybody's celebrating Mother's Day for their moms.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids, people are, like at school, my daughter, hey, you want to make something for your mom? Oh, yeah, not able to, and everybody's talking about those type of memories, right? And that escalates. That's a more difficult one.
It is.
Because her gravesite isn't close. And so all we can do, we talked about on Mother's Day, I had all the kids, I sent out a text and said, I think I said something about giving your favorite memory of your mom back and sharing some of those. So just trying not to ignore it, but to celebrate her life as best we can. So
yeah, absolutely love it. Now, one of the things we talked about was spirit, but I always like to talk about body and mind as well through the healing process. Talk about some of the things that you've done there and how that's been important to your personal healing process and your growth from this.
As far as my own, so when I was going through it, I gained a lot of weight.
Me too.
If that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, it was only so much you could do. And that was one thing I just, you're working and trying to be at the hospital, and you're grabbing stuff on the run. And during the global pandemic, I was hiding out in her room, actually. Had a doctor that allowed me in so I could be with her. So now I'm eating hospital food as best I can. I couldn't even go to the cafeteria. I was locked in the room. So she would share her food, if you can imagine. But anyway, but through all that, I gained weight. And then, so once I was over, I went back, I started getting physically, exercising again. I started, reading a little bit more, getting the mind and getting myself kind of refocused, the work, all of that. So my diet, those type of things, that's so important. And we've not just physically, but mentally, getting ourselves, plus counseling and those type of things as well. Those are all key components. And for me, it was going to church. It was praying each day in the morning and in the evening, just trying to keep myself focused on all of
so spirit was
body,
really
mind,
important for you, definitely. I found that the exercise, particularly exercise that got me moving forward, walking, running, those kind of things, it kind of, there's something about forward momentum, and they use that treatment to treat sufferers of PTSD, like war veterans. And, I would argue, Chris, that what you and I have been through is definitely a form of PTSD. We were there during the last moments and had to say goodbye to our wives, face to face in embrace. And that's trauma. And so, moving forward and kind of getting back to exercise and then starting to see some of the improvements in my body where I went from, 250 to 180. I mean, huge weight loss. It it gave me a confidence that said, I can grow out of this and create a better version, one that she would be really a lot more proud of. And for me, it started with body. I think you had spirit of your starting point, but regardless, I think you have to work across them. And then mind as well. I found like my mind was in a very sad, kind of depressed state. And by going out and starting to consume, for me, it was a lot of growth mindset podcasts that kind of got me hearing other people's tragedy stories and how they overcame great obstacles to still go and create a new version of themselves. That was really important to my process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah. I think, I may have had the spiritual component, which was that faith, that guiding light, but the physical was not there, and definitely the mind. I mean, there's a lot more anxiety, building up the stress, from trying to balance so many things. And I praise God for the support I had in the local community, because they served us meals for months.
Yeah.
Months. They brought meals to my family's home, but not everybody has that.
And it was a new community too, which made it even that much more special, right?
What's that?
Because it was a new community that you were in.
Yes.
That embraced you.
That's right. They did.
Yeah.
They really did. Yep. They wrapped their arms around my family and were awesome. So that was great. But yeah. But again, you're right. I'm like you. I didn't lose as much as you did. I have more girth than you do. So
You're looking good. I've seen the before after picture.
30 pounds lighter is nice. It's a nice feel.
Yeah.
And, again, you can move and you just feel better. You feel better about yourself.
And I know my girls are happier with it too, because they see dad being healthier. And I think they worry about being left alone. And so that was a really big motivator for me. And I don't know if it was for you, where it's like, look, I was abusing myself through this process. I was drinking way too much. I was eating way too much. I wasn't taking care of myself for plenty of good reason. But there was no good reason anymore. If I didn't start taking care of myself, I was not going to be around 2-3 years. I don't think I would have lasted even till today at the rate I was going. And my girls needed me. And I think that, for nothing else, if there's motivation in that should keep you, to say, look, I need to improve for my daughters. I need to improve for my sons in this, because they need to know that I'm going to be around.
Right. I agree. My kids never verbalize that, but believe me, I'm sure they've thought it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that leadership is a big driver for you. It's a passion that you have to codify leadership. What have you learned about leadership through this, tragic journey that you've been on?
Well, I think leadership through tragedy is I don't know how people can do it without faith, but it really was I was steadfast in truth, if you will. And what I kept doing was I was trying to make no decisions based on my emotion. And so I had to have facts and figures before me to be able to move forward with decisions. And so, for example, during the global pandemic, I was contrary to a lot of folks, to where I was studying data and not seeing things like, this disease was bad. COVID was bad and it was taking lives, but it wasn't at the same, level of other diseases. And so I was going, wait, are we overreacting here? And so I kept navigating. I was relating it all to my spouse's cancer. As you heard, it was a very rare form of cancer that she had. And so I'm thinking to myself, when I narrowed it all down, there's about a 1% chance she would ever get cancer. But that didn't matter to my family or to her, or that, she had it, right? It's kind of the same with COVID. But you can't make decisions on, all of society based off of 1% of a population that has a particular type of cancer. You can't treat them all the same. I think they said there's 1 billion different types of cancer and there's 1 billion different types of treatment. I think that's kind of what I heard. There's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And so that's the approach that I took. And it's been actually my approach throughout my whole life in leadership, is that I study the data. And I think as leaders, you can't be overly emotional. You have to really, and people see strength in that. It's not a lack of empathy or a lack of sympathy or any of that type of thing. It's a leadership takes strength, and it takes, okay, we got a guiding light. We got the bombs are going off all around us, and we still got to decide: do we move our troops forward? Do we hold steady, or do we is it now time to retreat?
Yeah.
I have a lot of lives at stake. I got a lot of people. I'm trying to, figure it out. And whether it's employees, okay, am I going to lose this company? I've got to keep my eye on the ball, and it takes that special steadfastness of calm. And that's, for me, was a spiritual. There was that morning time, that prayer. Others, it may be that exercise. I got to go take. For me, I could never think when I run. I can't do that. Some people can run for an hour and they have their whole speech lined out when they're done.
I am that way. I meditate. I come up with. I write when I run. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do it. But anyway, but nonetheless, that's what it takes, and that's that leadership through tragedy. Again, with everything, all the fireworks going off, you have to be. You still got to make decisions, and you got to be calm. And you got to listen to the facts. And I tell people, don't ask me for a decision immediately. I may not be able to make it. Give me a day or so or a few hours to I can concentrate to make sure that I'm not just reacting. Because if that happens, then that's when bad decisions start happening.
And Chris, I love it. There's a scientific reason for that. And you articulated it well, where when you're in a stressful situation like we are post-tragedy, and dealing with the aftermath, our amygdala is overloaded. So our reptilian brain, the older part of our brain, those emotions are already raw, right? And if you go and try to make decisions off of that, oftentimes you can't. It's a neuroscience bias called amygdala overload, where you just can't make a decision one way or the other. And if you do make a decision, it's likely to be very emotional based, because your logical part of the brain, your neocortex, is not enabled. So you've got to be able to slow down, think slow, and make sure that the thinking part of your brain is activated instead of the emotional part of the brain. So spot on.
I always think of Winston Churchill. He was the one, he was hiding out in the bunker making decisions and running out in front. And but he wasn't the guy standing on the front line, because that would be stupid to have the leader out there trying to get shelled, right? Mm-hmm. But he sat back. He made the decisions, and he was calm through the effort while all of London is blowing up. And so that's kind of a great example of leadership in that respect through tragedy and turmoil. So,
Chris, a lot of people listening have been through similar journey. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to them?
It's going to get better. The every day is a little better. Initially, it's a cloud of, almost a cloud of darkness. But keep your eyes focused on the light in front of you. As people want to help you, accept it. Don't turn away. Because they're as I used to tell my late wife, when people wanted to bring meals and that during her cancer treatment, she go, I just don't want to be around people. And I said, you need to allow them the grace that God is giving them to be able to serve you for a change. Mm-hmm. This is your time to be the servant, to be the receptive or reception person of those gifts, and to allow people to receive grace for their generosity. That was hard. That was hard because you're one person has it all together. Mm-hmm. Good. I'm running the company. I'm doing this, and I don't need everybody else's help.
I agree, and especially the fellowship of other men sometimes was the hard part. Accepting the food was kind of easy until the fridge couldn't handle it anymore, and then we had another fridge stuffed, right? But blessings. I mean, thank goodness the meal plans were there and everyone was there contributing. I found it harder a little bit to be able to have, a men's group and to be able to share with brothers and Talk about that a little bit. Have you been able to do that? And we've created a little bit of a brotherhood, and a little group.
I had a faith group of men in Kansas City, and I relied on them. There's 6 other men, and even though I was in Florida and they were in Kansas City, they were walking with me through the whole tragedy. They were men of prayer and providing that and support. They called frequently. They were including me in on conference calls or their meetings, the best I could. And it is important. We men have different needs than women do, and women need that same support from other women, and men have that too. And so we were all the men's group. We're all CEOs and leaders in our companies, and so it was good to be able to reflect on that. And they were like, "Wow, how do you do that? What are we doing?" And one of them's wife had cancer, so we were able to talk through some of those challenges. That he was able to work through. So anyway, those are very important other relationships. And now, as as widowers, Tom, as you know, it's another distinct group. It's not a group that you or I, neither one, would love to be a part of.
I know.
Or desire to
saw myself here, 10 years ago, whatever. But
it's what we need. It's what we need. It's a unique group, and it's okay. It's okay.
Absolutely.
No, sorry.
Chris Ice, thank you so much. Where can people find and reach you?
You can go to my website, iceexecutivecoaching.com. That's one. And that'd probably be the best place, because my email and everything is within there, and the contact information. So it tells, I don't share a lot of my story there. But there is a new video that's up now that's going to be aired on June 8th on the Catholic television, EWTN, and that'll be they picked that story up. It's about a 6-7 minute story that they're going to be sharing a little bit on my faith journey. So.
Chris, that video is so well done. I encourage everyone to go and check it out. We'll include a link to your executive coaching website, and I can't thank you enough for participating with us today, Chris. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, Tom. And again, God bless you, and thank you for all you're doing for the kingdom right now, and all these great other men who are in desire of this, the need of this, just this discussion. So,
any way that we can help, I know we want to. So, thank you all for listening to the Grow Through Grief podcast. If you liked what you heard, please tap like. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest episodes. And until next time, my growth warriors, keep growing.